On the being vulnerable and the fear bit, how many people do we hear from that have something to say maybe, but they're not quite sure how to say it? And then maybe if they're not sharing something, and if we keep it on LinkedIn for now, who am I and what do I have to say? I mean, everyone's got something to say. Everyone's got an opinion on something. And I think that starting point is the hardest bit. But when you get started and you start seeing what that does, whether it's you post one thing a week or you start commenting on some other people's posts each week and just seeing what comes back from that, you just don't know. So I think there's so many people that are kind of missing that opportunity, unfortunately. And I can't remember the exact number, but less than 5% of people are actually engaging on LinkedIn, right? In terms of the 1 billion plus members that are on there. Yes, I think there's this fear that's holding people back from doing things that they might find really interesting, and not only on LinkedIn, but in life in general. And, people carry on doing the same things. And until you change something, nothing's going to change.
There is so much more opportunity there for people to share. And you're right. I think people mainly get stuck in a bit of a mindset of they don't necessarily want to appear vulnerable, or they don't know what to say, or they don't know how to articulate it. And so they don't do anything. And they don't even start. But yeah, no, that's great to hear. And then obviously that's from an individual's perspective, and there's a lot of talk about personal branding on LinkedIn and the benefits of personal branding for the individual and for their career. When you look at a person who works for an organization as an employee, where do you feel the benefits are for the organization for their employees to be proactive on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so keeping with LinkedIn, and we hear about personal branding all the time, and everyone's got their version of what that means. And I really think it's about, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? Maybe, that could be a good example of what that might mean. And it's really about your reputation. Moving away from LinkedIn being your profile that is just the same as what your CV might read, for example, as an employee, right? And if you think about going for a role, the person that's hiring you or potentially going to be hiring you will look at your LinkedIn CV and try and understand who you are as a person. But, there is that conflict of interest, right? Where your LinkedIn, if a company is encouraging an individual to make sure that their presence is alive on LinkedIn, let's say, the worry that they might then go out and leave and move on to another company, right? And that's not the point. I think that's a really negative and old-fashioned way of thinking about it. For me, it's more, if you're building that reputation and that personal brand, like you say, it's how do you help others who don't know maybe about that company that you work at to talk about it from how are we going to attract talent? What are the great things that happen at this company? It might be the culture. It might be leadership. It might be certain things within the organization that you absolutely love. And sharing messages around that on LinkedIn is really helpful for people that don't know. Saw an example just this week, actually, where someone shared a post. I won't name the person, but they shared a post based on somebody they knew and were connected with who had just joined a new company that this person had never heard about. But they then went to follow that company because this person went to join that company, right? And I think that's the power of sharing your message and talking a little bit more openly and not worrying about that kind of fear or staying in your comfort zone. So I think, there's probably a couple of things in that, but that branding piece can mean so many things. It can be an individual personal brand, and it can also mean a company brand, and tying those two things together. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I think organizations face.